Have you ever been in a room full of people, laughing, talking, having fun, and still felt completely alone? Like you're watching everyone else interact through a glass wall that you can see through but can never touch. That experience isn't just awkward or uncomfortable for millions of people. It's a deep, invisible pain that shapes the way they experience life. Today we're diving into a psychological mystery that most people overlook. Why do some people feel lonely even when surrounded by others? This isn't about being physically alone, it's about the hidden loneliness that lives inside relationships, parties, marriages, classrooms, and friend groups. Loneliness isn't simply a lack of company. Scientists define it as a perceived gap between the social connection you want and what you feel you actually have. Two people can sit side by side in a cafe, one might feel joyful and connected, while the other feels like the world is just out of reach. But why does this happen? Why do some people walk through crowds and still feel invisible? The answer is complicated, and it reveals something profound about human psychology. First, let's talk about what's inside our minds, the internal world that others rarely see. The core of loneliness is not proximity, it's connection. A person can tap someone on the shoulder and still feel unseen if their inner experience tells them they don't matter. What creates that inner experience? The roots of this kind of loneliness start early, sometimes in childhood, sometimes in subtle patterns of relationships we never fully understood. Many people who feel chronically lonely learned early on to distrust connection. Maybe their caregivers were unpredictable emotionally, warm one moment and distant the next. Maybe their emotional needs were minimized, invalidated, or ignored. Over time, the brain learns a pattern: connection is unreliable, so it's safer not to expect it. That pattern doesn't disappear in adulthood. Instead, it becomes a silent filter through which every social moment is interpreted. Imagine walking into a room and interpreting every look as subtle judgment, every laugh as belonging to someone else. Your nervous system lights up with anxiety. Your brain scans for rejection cues. And before a conversation even begins, parts of your brain are saying, "I am different. I don't belong." This is not a choice. It's a psychological response rooted in survival instinct, your brain trying to protect you by avoiding the risk of rejection. Here's the twist: people who feel lonely around others are often highly socially aware. They notice micro-expressions, tones of voice, subtle shifts in attention, things most people miss. But instead of feeling connected through that awareness, it becomes a mental feedback loop of self-consciousness and self-judgment. They might think, "Did I say something weird? Is that person judging me? They're bored of me already." These thoughts occur so fast and so unconsciously that the person may not even realize they're happening. Another key factor is emotional attunement. Humans aren't just social, we're emotionally social. We want others to feel with us, not just be physically near us. When someone's emotional needs aren't met, when others don't respond to feelings with empathy, it creates a kind of void that proximity alone can't fill. You can sit next to someone for hours and feel profoundly alone if there's no emotional resonance. That's why lonely people often crave deep connection but feel exhausted by small talk. Superficial interaction doesn't feel like connection, it feels like waiting. Many people who feel lonely also struggle with self-perception. They see themselves as unworthy of love or connection. They assume others won't understand them, won't care about their inner experience, or will dismiss their emotional vulnerability. These assumptions create a psychological barrier, even if others are open to connection. The lonely person may unconsciously block closeness because they expect hurt. This is similar to an immune response, expecting connection to fail again and again. Their brain goes into protective mode, keeping others at a psychological distance. Loneliness increases stress hormones, heightens vigilance for negative social cues, and lowers the ability to self-regulate emotions. In other words, loneliness isn't just a feeling, it changes the way the brain functions. It makes someone less likely to take social risks, more likely to perceive rejection where there is none, and more prone to withdraw when connection is most needed. But here's something surprising: people who feel lonely around others are not necessarily socially inept. Many of them are articulate, responsive, charming, even popular on the surface. Their loneliness isn't a lack of social skill, it's a mismatch between external interaction and internal fulfillment. They're like radios tuning into a frequency most people don't broadcast on. They can speak, they can socialize, but the connection they crave, the feeling of being truly understood, just isn't there. This inner loneliness also creates a paradox: the harder they try to connect, the more invisible they feel. Why? Because when anxiety and self-doubt are active in social moments, it interferes with genuine expression. Instead of present engagement, their attention is split, half with the people around them, and half on their internal spotlight of self-criticism. Others may sense the tension, even if they don't know the reason. Social connection thrives on authenticity and ease, two things loneliness disrupts. So what does real connection feel like to someone who experiences loneliness around people? It looks like these subtle shifts: open emotional expression, feeling understood without explaining every nuance, an absence of judgment, attunement to vulnerability, and presence, not just response. These experiences are rare because they require two people willing to be emotionally honest, without masks or performances. Therapy, for instance, helps people rewrite the internal narrative about self-worth and connection. It teaches emotional attunement, not just recognizing feelings but tolerating them, expressing them safely, and interpreting others' responses realistically instead of through a lens of threat. Supportive relationships, whether with friends, partners, or community groups, provide corrective experiences where connection happens not by chance, but through intentional vulnerability and response. You don't have to figure it all out alone. The first step is acknowledging that loneliness doesn't mean you're incapable of connection, it means your connection has been misunderstood, unmet, or misread. When you begin to understand that distinction, the loneliness starts to lose its power, and connection, real, felt, resonant connection, becomes possible.